Saddam Hussein must go. So far, of course, we do not know the fate of Saddam Hussein. Lots of rumors that he was injured in the first night of attacks. Just a little while ago, a senior official telling us they are still trying to figure out exactly what happened to him, what his whereabouts may be, as well as the top advisor.
I grew up in like the American media ecosystem, bombarded with like TV news that was like, mission accomplished in the war in Iraq. And all that set me up for when I went to Iraq for the first time was realizing how much bullshit like all of that information was that I had received, and realizing that the country was beautiful and wonderful, and the people were so warm and kind and welcoming to an American who had, his tax dollars had paid for a large degree of destruction in their nation. And so I'd spent a lot of time trying to show the realities of Iraq and the realities of people that lived there in a way that like I hadn't seen and hadn't been represented to me growing up as an American in the US. And so I tried to approach my photography and my work through a lens of like showing things I might not have been shown as a younger version of myself, and trying to represent anything and anybody in any place I am with the same amount of honesty that I hope other people in media try to present about the things that they're working on too. The world is a very complicated, a super complicated place with a lot of nuance. And so it's obviously like impossible to accurately represent everyone and everything you see all the time with as much like nuance as there is in the world, and complicated personalities and histories. Trying to do it is the best I can do in most situations. And that goes to like not glamorizing things or making things seem like better or more exciting than they are. And then also like making things not seem sadder or more depressing or more exciting. Like there's like some weird fine balance where like I'm just trying to show things like in the reality that I witnessed them and experienced them, and maybe that comes across. In 2015, after I moved there, it was like being talked about that there would be an attempt to retake Mosul. I was like at those trainings with the different military organizations that were going to retake the city. And there was like, I was at the refugee camps that people had fled to once they like fled from ISIS territory. And there was just like a lot of buildup in 2015 for what would possibly be the retaking of the city. And so then the next year, in the spring of 2016, some moves were made to like start taking back the city. And I'd been there now for over a year and a half, and like had enough resources where I felt like kind of comfortable enough to start covering that, and began in the spring of 2016 like covering the fighting to like on the perimeters of the city to take it back. None of those photos are in the book, but that was like the start of the work. And then the real effort to take it back was launched that fall. It was this like crazy day in October, where like all these forces were like lined up the night before, and we slept outside, and then they launched this military operation to take back the city. And we like rolled in on like the back of Humvees or something. Like it was just like kind of a crazy day. And then that was like the start of the next 9 months of what would be like an effort by Iraqi forces to like retake the city of like 2 million people.
Yeah, I know this captain, I know.
So I covered it over the next 9 months for everybody and anybody, and would take that money and any money I made off assignments and like throw that back into trying to figure out how to cover it by myself, and like would hire people to take me in for a day, and just covered it as much as I could over those 9 months. And then by the end of the 9 months, it was like the summer of 2017, and I was exhausted, and the war was finished. And I got contacted by some UN organizations to keep documenting the city and documenting the reconstruction of the city. And so those trips allowed me to like continue funding more trips, and it was just like this spiral of work that just built up over time. And so I ended up leaving Iraq after the fighting for the city finished, and then was going back to Iraq every 5 or 6 months for like a month or two at a time to continue working in the city and photographing its reconstruction. And then I did that up until the pandemic. And once the pandemic started, I was kind of like trapped in the US and didn't get back to Iraq. And that coincided with having a daughter. And it was in 2020 that I sat down and thought about how maybe this could like turn into like some larger body of work. A lot of the work that's in the book is kind of like talking about the architecture and the loss of like history. And I didn't, although like I wanted to talk about that, I didn't actually have the images to talk about that. And so I needed to go make those images, because I spent a lot of time like walking over rubble and like ducking through broken doorways and looking at all these old beautiful pieces of stone that were crushed and walking over like just ruins. And I didn't have the imagery to like complement how beautiful Mosul is and was. And I just didn't have those images to say that part of the story. And if you look at the work now, you can see it's like I tried to weave it through in a way that you see both the destruction and the beauty, in a way that I hope complements, like they complement each other, but also make people mourn the loss of what it was, because Mosul was a really beautiful place. Like the old city specifically was just so architecturally rich, and it was flattened. And by like showing what is left, like the remaining doorways and the remaining alabaster stone like monuments, like hopefully that like imbues a little bit of mourning for the reader, on like what we lose as a society through war. I sequenced it first, and then Jason, the designer I worked with, resequenced it, and then it's his final sequence with my edits. But yeah, the work started with like 5,000 photos, and then now is like, I think it's like just under 100. I forget the exact count, but it's down quite a bit from that. And so I cut everything down. I had this wall behind me was not with the bookshelf. It used to just be a blank wall, and I just hung up over 100 photos and then just like sequenced them until I got sick. I just like every time I would walk into my room, I'd be like, I don't like that photo, or like I really like that pairing, and I'm gonna leave that. And then every time I didn't, like after a while, I was like, if I don't like something, I'll take it down. Just like kept removing photos until I had what I thought was like a workable body, and then worked over that with Jason, the designer. And then he came back with new ideas on how the flow could work. And he was much more focused on how images are tied together over the entire book. My initial edit was much more focused on like individual sequencing in like a direct line. And so my images were like, my first edit was like much more sequenced, like how does this image connect to this image, connect to this image, versus like how does this image connect to like the last image, and like how does that flow happen over the course of the book. And Jason obviously has produced a number of books, and this is my first, and he was able to bring like a a whole lot of insight into how like 100 photo edit could flow over the course of somebody actually holding something and working through it, which I really appreciated. I have a lot of books to get through and sell right now. And I'm going back and reprinting the book next month. So I'm going on press to reprint it, and I'm sending those books to Iraq, and then sending other books to American politicians. And so the goal there is to put books back in schools and libraries and cultural centers and into the people's hands who the book is about. And so doing 500 books into Iraq, and I'm going to go deliver those in October. And then the other 500 are going to come back to my office here, and those are going to get sent out to people that had a hand in the war on terror. And that is the next step in this project, and trying to get through that. Seeing things like that reaffirm my hope in humanity, and just like the beautiful resilience that so many people have in themselves, and the resilience of society. Like watching Mosul recover over the years has just been like so beautiful and really amazing to see, and hope it like gives me hope for like all societies that are dealing with war right now, that like one day the war will stop, and then it'll take a really long time, but eventually people will persist and they will survive and they will get past it, and they'll repair themselves and their lives and their city. There is hope in that. I will say at the end of photographing the war in Mosul, I was asked on an interview if I had any hope, and I think I said no. But now, like looking back, like I've been chatting with friends in Mosul quite frequently, and like they just like rebuilt the minaret like last year, which is like one of the defining, like I think it's one of my defining photos in the book, which is the destroyed minaret in the old city, which ISIS blew up, and UNESCO rebuilt the minaret it took like 7 years to rebuild that thing, but it's like finally rebuilt, and it feels like a symbol of hope for the city. And I'm like really excited to go back and see it.